Let's cross over now to Washington and speak to Harry Kazianis. He is the Director of Defense Studies at the Center for the National Interest. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Kazianis. We just heard that report from Judge Sudworth, how much influence Beijing has over Pyongyang. And with China in the UN Security Council calling for more dialogue, are we likely to see them turning the taps off on Kim Jong-un?
Well, to answer your question, Beijing has tremendous influence over North Korea. And to be very clear, if Beijing wanted to, it could end the North Korean regime by, as you said, turn off the taps, essentially shutting off the flow of oil, natural gas, food supplies. Essentially, North Korea would not exist without China. The challenge for the Chinese, though, is that they're not going to do anything like that. And speaking to Chinese colleagues over the years at Track 2 Dialogues and other formats, very senior officials have said to me they don't like the status quo. They don't like like North Korea with nuclear weapons, but they look at the alternatives. You know, a North Korea that would be destabilized, fall apart, fall into civil war, you know, millions of refugees going into China. That for them is even worse. In terms of dialogue, I don't think the North Koreans are going to come to the table. They want to develop their nuclear program, and I think also the United States is not going to want to come to the table. Keep in mind, there's 3 hostages of American descent in North Korea right now. This makes all for a very, very troubling situation.
And of course, the United States in the UN Security Council has said that North Korea is begging for war, so they want the strongest sanctions, which could include China.
Absolutely. And I think where the administration is slowly turning to at this point is really some sort of, I think, warning first to Chinese banks to say, look, we know for a fact that certain Chinese banks are helping the North Koreans essentially launder money. And that money, probably a good chunk of it, is going to feed the North Korean nuclear and missile programs. So I think I wouldn't be shocked, to be honest with you, if Donald Trump went on Twitter, issued the Chinese a stern warning and said, look, your banks have to stop doing this. If not, I think those banks are going to be sanctioned by the United States. And to take that a step further, I wouldn't be shocked if those banks did not, stop what they were doing and potentially could get cut off of the U.S. financial system. But that would be a major escalatory step, but it could happen.
But what could be the repercussions for U.S.-China relations? The Chinese could retaliate.
Oh, they certainly could. And we have to keep in mind that the U.S.-China trade relationship is worth $650 billion plus. This is the premier trade relationship throughout the world. So the Chinese would have levers to respond. But to be honest with you, I think Beijing ends up taking a middle road here. I don't think they'll completely cut off the North Koreans, but I do think they will stop doing these sort of illegal activities and financial activities with North Korea, maybe even just for a time. But I think it'll be enough to pressure the North Koreans maybe to stop some of these missile and nuclear tests for a time. But I think really the long-term trends are the North Koreans will continue testing even after a pause because they want a fully developed nuclear deterrent.
Still many questions of what could happen going forward. Thank you so much for your insights. Harry Kazianis, Director of Defense Studies at the Center for the National Interest.